I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
In no way would the world be better off without our United Nations. It is worth fighting for.
Strong support for multilateralism as the President of the General Assembly lays out her priorities for the rest of the session. Urgent calls for change in Sudan as years of conflict take a heavy humanitarian toll.
The UN needs reform. There is a consensus on that. The problem is what kind of a reform? If we start
Reshaping the UN for the future. A conversation with Italy's ambassador. Next.
The Middle East region remains a key concern for the UN Security Council. This week, diplomats highlighted the situation in Yemen. Tensions between rival factions have been escalating in the country, and Yemen faces a number of humanitarian challenges.
More than 18 million Yemenis, or half the population, will face acute food insecurity next month. They will be hungry, tens of thousands catastrophically so, facing famine-like conditions. This is worse than 1 year ago, with at least 1 million additional people now hungry. Women and girls are hit hardest, often eating last and least.
From the Security Council to the briefing room and beyond, Shudija is monitoring the latest developments inside the UN. Dija.
Yes, Elaine. A lot happened this week here at UN headquarters. So let's start with Iran. As we've all seen the situation in Iran rapidly unfolding, the UN Secretary General expressed serious concern and urged all sides to ensure the right to peaceful protest.
All Iranians must be able to express their grievances peacefully and without fear of repression. The rights to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and freedom of peaceful assembly, as enshrined in international law, must be respected and fully protected.
U.S. President Donald Trump has on multiple occasions voiced support for the protesters and spoken of strong options against the Iranian government. Does the UN see that as incitement?
He's also been listening to the rhetoric that we've heard around the situation in Iran, which is concerning to him, and he encourages all to adopt a path of diplomacy and dialogue.
Now to Ukraine. On Monday, the Security Council held a meeting on Ukraine. Under Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo warned of intensified fighting, deadly strikes on civilian and energy infrastructure, and worsening winter conditions. She called for de-escalation, protection of civilians, and an immediate ceasefire to enable a lasting peace.
We reaffirm the Secretary General's repeated calls for an immediate, full, and unconditional ceasefire as a first step towards a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace grounded in respect for international law and the principles of the United Nations Charter.
And now to the United Nations itself. This week, after the Secretary General sent a letter to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressing concern over Israeli Knesset legislation amendment targeting UNRWA, Israel's UN Ambassador Denis Denoun accused the UN of choosing to threaten Israel, saying it was defending an organization marred by terrorism. The UN strongly rejected that characterization.
The letter, as you refer, was not a threat. I mean, the Secretary General is not in the business of threatening member states. It was a reaffirmation of the responsibilities of the government of Israel, a reaffirmation of the rights of the United Nations as agreed to in the General Convention on the Privileges of Immunity, which we expect every single member state to respect.
Finally, on Wednesday, President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, briefed the member states on her priorities for 2026. She warned that multilateralism is under attack and urged countries to defend the UN Charter, reform and modernize the organization, pay their dues, and show principled cross-regional leadership.
History will not remember the debates of fine details, but it will remember whether we choose the right path. We will see it in the face of the next Secretary General. We will feel it in the scale and ambition of our reforms. And we will judge it against the promises etched into our charter.
But without real resolve and political will from key member states, how can the UN protect itself, let alone the world?
Couple of member states, they are very, very, very key member states. They are not respecting the UN Charter, international laws. They are not paying their regular budgets. In that sense, they would damage the UN. So how can UN protect itself from this kind of damage, and not even let alone the world?
To put it very short, to find the resolve not to give up. I mean, there is this famous quote from one Holocaust survivor: "For evil to prevail, it only needs good men to do nothing." And this is exactly where we are standing right now, at a crossroads. The member states and the world by this has to decide whether they are standing up, whether they are standing up to do the right thing, even though it's hard, even though if they are facing heavy, heavy headwinds.
Well, and that's all from me for now. Back to you, Elaine.
Shudeja, thanks. The conflict in Sudan has raged on for nearly 3 years. The violence has levied a staggering humanitarian impact. More than 9 million people have been forced from their homes, with more than 4 million fleeing to neighboring countries. Those who remain often face dire conditions, with an estimated 21 million people facing food insecurity.
Despite sustained efforts by WHO and partners to restore and revive health services, more than 1/3 of health facilities remain non-functional. WHO calls for unrestricted and safe access to all areas of Sudan to restore access to health services, and we call for the protection of civilians from attacks, including health and humanitarian workers and patients. And we call for an end to the conflict by all parties in Sudan.
The UN says it will continue to deliver on its mandates despite a major pullback from the United States. The White House is withdrawing from dozens of international organizations. The decision affects 31 UN agencies and entities, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change.
The Secretary General regrets the announcement by the White House regarding the United States' decision to withdraw from a number of United Nations entities. As we have consistently said and underscored, assess contributions to the United Nations regular budget and the peacekeeping budget as approved by the General Assembly are legal obligations under the United Nations Charter for every member state, including the United States. All United Nations entities will go on with the implementation of their mandates as given to us by member states. The United Nations has a responsibility to deliver for all those who depend on us, and we will continue to carry out our mandates with determination.
Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda.
More than 100 children have been killed in Gaza since the ceasefire of early October. That's roughly a girl or a boy killed here every day during a ceasefire.
UNICEF is calling for an end to the violence still taking place despite the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The organization also says more aid is needed as harsh winter weather brings new challenges to those living with limited shelter in Gaza. The International Court of Justice began 3 weeks of hearings into the plight of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. Gambia brought the case to the court. Rohingyas have been fleeing Myanmar since 2017. More than 1 million are living in neighboring Bangladesh. The World Health Organization is encouraging governments to raise taxes on sugary drinks and alcohol. Taxes on those items have been shown to decrease consumption, and that can help reduce disease rates and burdens on healthcare systems.
Coming up,
Everyone recognized that the Security Council today, its composition is outdated, does not reflect the reality of the 21st century.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
The UN Security Council has long consisted of 5 permanent and 10 rotating non-permanent members, but that could be changing. There are increasing calls for reform of the Council. I discussed that and other issues with Italy's UN Ambassador, Maurizio Massari. Ambassador, reform is a big topic at the United Nations right now. If you can, tell us a little bit about the reform that you hope to take place at the UN Security Council. And then I'd also like to ask you about budget reform at the UN.
Of course, I mean, the UN needs a reform. There is a consensus on that. The problem is what kind of a reform? If we start from the Security Council, everyone recognized that the Security Council today, its composition is outdated, does not reflect the reality of the 21st century. The 5 permanent members plus 10 non-permanent members. Africa doesn't have a permanent seat. Latin America the same. Asia is represented only by China, though China is a big country and a superpower. So there is a discussion ongoing already for many years on how to reform, how to make it better. And here the dilemma is, on the one hand, you have to enlarge, expand the representation. On the other, you have to preserve the functionality of the council. And because of the veto power, of course, if you expand the number of permanent members with the veto power, this impacts negatively on the functioning of the Security Council. There are some negotiating groups that suggest to expand the Security Council with 6 new permanent members with the veto power. Imagine 5 now plus 6 new permanent members with the veto power, you would have 11 countries with the veto. I mean, this would make it really impossible. That's why we suggest as Italy to expand, yes, to Africa and Asia, Latin America, not the West. The West is already well represented in the Council. but to expand to sort of non-permanent members, elected members, even with the possibility to stay longer than 2 years, 3 or 4 years to be re-elected. We call this longer non-permanent seats like semi-permanent. And this, I think it's the most sensible proposal that we can have to expand to improve the representativeness of the council without impacting negatively on the functionality and the decision-making capacity.
What about budget reform?
Budget reform is absolutely crucial. I think, as is well known, I mean, the UN is under financial stress. There's a liquidity crisis, and the SG, Antonio Guterres proposed this proposal to reform the budget, UN 80, cutting a lot of waste in the bureaucracy, 15-20% in the secretariat, and also in different stages, also to reduce the number of agencies and programs, to merge them. Having said that, even this rationalization will not resolve the liquidity crisis organization. You can resolve the liquidity crisis only if each and every member state pays in time and its contribution. And maybe, because we have now the problem with the United States that is not interested in continuing to pay the biggest part of the budget. Maybe we should have a kind of a review of the assessment scale of contribution, and to have also other countries, emerging economies everywhere in the world to contribute more. Maybe this is time to have a burden sharing more balanced, less focused on one or two donors. And this is certainly something that needs to be discussed. If you want the UN to survive and to do things, because you cannot do things in humanitarian development, crisis prevention, mediation without resources.
Staying on reform quickly, there's talk about reforming the process to elect the next UN Secretary General. You're a champion of women. There's a woman that leads your country. Do you hope to see a female lead the United Nations?
Of course, I do. I think as many countries and permanent representatives here, we never had a woman leading the organization. It's about time. Having said that, of course, I mean, we need to support the best possible candidate. And here, I mean, maybe meritocracy, for the good of the organization, meritocracy is even more important than the gender aspect. We need to choose the best, the brightest person, whether it's a he or she. And I'm sure there will be a lot of candidates around interested in taking this job, which at this time around has a particular importance. There are a lot of expectations that next Secretary General could really make an impact on making the organization even more dynamic and efficient than it has been so far.
Italy getting ready to host the Winter Olympics. Tell us quickly what is happening right now, the excitement taking place, and I understand you have something here at the mission.
Yeah. We very excited about this great event, and as you know, we also facilitated a UN resolution on the Olympic truth, which passed less than a month ago by consensus. With 165 co-sponsors, so which is basically almost the entire international community, and so we are very proud of that. But also because it shows that around the theme of ending violence, ending conflict, the international community can still get together despite all the divisions, fragmentations, polarization. Still around this theme of ending violence, we are united, and we hope that this will be translated into reality.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
UN Insider.
No war, no one again began holding guns. Words, protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
There is no more they, or you, or me. In today's economic landscape, there is only we. An interconnected world of business, trade, and investment. Daily coverage told simply, with insight and new perspectives. Global business. We've got the world covered.
Renewable energy is growing in popularity. Hydropower, wind, and solar are becoming a bigger part of the overall electric consumption. In eastern China, one city has made solar power a priority. In fact, the energy source has become part of the city's identity.
Solar is the star of an industrial park in Jiangsu province. These large-scale photovoltaic systems have earned the city of Taizhou the nickname Solar City. Han Ji oversees the zero-carbon businesses in Haining District, Taizhou.
We are now going to the district government to check the progress of some projects at a school. We've communicated with them before, and now we are just doing the final walkthrough. We have to confirm with the school as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be no time to finish. We also need to upgrade the blueprints. We'll be wasting our time if they reject the plans.
The progress of solar energy construction is reported online. If the project is currently in progress, it will be reported to the district leader.
Building a solar city in Hailing District involves several aspects. One is the manufacturing capacity, which involves the supply chains for the solar photovoltaic modules. The second is installation for the entire module. And lastly, the energy output, which also relates to digital management.
These are the 3 zero-carbon cabins on our Sun Island. They're equipped with photovoltaic modules on the roof and generate 130,000 kilowatt an hour of electricity every year, enough to fully satisfy the needs of all 3 cabins. We plan to vigorously promote this kind of project in the future. After seeing so many solar power plants built one by one, I have a great sense of achievement.
These plants need light to generate electricity, From my point of view, I have been working on solar projects for more than 10 years. This place and these projects are very meaningful to me.
Solar is a clean energy. Fossil fuels will be scarce one day. We should use more renewable energy, such as solar or wind. Hopefully, people will be more committed to low-carbon lifestyles, saving energy and reducing emissions.
After all, this is a carbon problem. Achieving peak carbon dioxide emissions and truly being carbon neutral is what we hope to see in the future. This is the motivation for the work we do. Solar is not only an industry, but also a great cause.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.